Hello lovely people, it's Dario again, and we are in July, finally ready for a tour of the garden in July. Time flew, didn't it? It seems like this time of the year there's no rest, there's no pause, at least for us, and so everything goes very fast, and by the time we realize it's summer, it's already gone. So I hope you're enjoying your gardens and you will enjoy today's tour. We will start from the tunnel, even though it's really hot. It's been really hot this last few days. Today we had 30 plus degrees, and at the moment I imagine it will be about 28 degrees, and it's 5 p.m. so you can imagine how challenging that can be for people who are not used to it, and especially plants which are not used to it. But things are coping really well in the garden, as you will see in a moment, and no dig helps enormously with that. We have been watering, especially new plantings, but things are coping really nicely. So we will start from the polytunnel, where the temperatures are quite prohibitive at the moment. So let's get going. Very humid in here and very hot. It's also full of insects that have got stuck in the plastic within the structure. Tomatoes are loving this weather. Aubergines are doing fine. I mean, we planted them very late, as you'll see in a minute, and then we have cucumbers are also producing, which are also producing really well. So let me turn the camera around and we'll have a look at how things are doing. We've been really impressed with the beef tomatoes this year. We have two varieties. One is Marmande, which is a French heritage variety. Relatively small this year. They seem to have produced a lot of fruits per truss, and they're a lot smaller than usual. I wonder if that's got to do with calcium. We've been supplementing with a little bit of calcium through a vinegar extraction of eggshells. Eggshells have got, like bones and other animal hard structures, have got hydroxyapatite, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, which has got calcium embedded within a proteic or a organic structure, and you can release it by doing certain process, and essentially we've been using that as an amendment. But you can see that these guys here are really charged. So this is Brandy Boy, the other variety, and on the side you can see the basil, which has been a bit stressed, competing for water and also a lot of heat. So it's about to go to flower. If we pick it in time, we might get a few cuts before it becomes too stemmy and flowery. Some of the beef tomatoes are flowering now. Let me have a look. Sorry, not flowering but ripening. You have to bear with me today. I'm a bit tired in this heat and I haven't slept a lot. So here we go. So they are ripening nicely, and the fruits are perfect in terms of quality. There are bigger and smaller ones, and as I've said, the Marmande type seem to have remained a little bit smaller, but that's all right. On the left hand side here, I'm going to turn around actually, so it's going to be on your right hand side. There are Apero, which is an amazing variety, cherry tomatoes, very long trusses and red, thick skin, very flavoursome cherry tomatoes. And on the other side, let's see if we can do this. There we go. So if we turn around here, you can see some of the basil was planted as a plug plant, and it didn't do as well as the ones that we potted up and then planted from the pots, 8 centimeter pots. I'll show you some of the leftover plants in a minute. This is Sangold. Look at these trusses, really long. This year it's been amazing for tomatoes, but we also nailed the fertilization regime properly. We added a little bit of chicken manure in the planting hole, just a little bit, and this is pelleted organically certified chicken manure, and then we've been spraying every 3 to 4 weeks with some calcium and magnesium from Epsom salts and the calcium from the eggshells, and they seem to have loved that very gentle organic supplementation. They're really demanding, and you might notice that they're really closely planted for our climate. We go with 35 centimeter spacing, and so I want to finish the tomato bit. I know people are always very excited in this country about tomatoes. I'm not the biggest fan. I mean, I love tomatoes, of course, but you know, can't get myself too excited about them, I guess. So these guys here are a yellow submarine, so they'll go yellow when they're ripe. I can't see any that have ripened already. We've picked them in the last few days to sell, and these haven't ripened yet. And this is chocolate cherry, large cherry tomato with a chocolatey brownish smoked appearance. And these ones, which haven't done really well this year, are pink zebra, I think they're called. They've got kind of a zebra striation, zebra-like striation, and they go really pinkish red color. And Mosangold and honeycomb, which are two similar varieties. Look at the abundance of these trusses. And finally we have the cucumbers here. I've just picked them, and they've been producing really abundantly. Some plants at this end haven't done so well, so we might replace them with a new succession just to have later cucumbers. But essentially you can see the plants developing nicely, much taller than me by now. And might be interesting for some of you to know how to prune cucumbers if you train them up. Let me see, it's difficult with the camera. So each node has got three things coming out of it. One tendril, which is this one, which wants to really grab on to stuff to climb up. And then a vegetative shoot, which makes a side shoot, really like the ones that tomatoes have. Let me see, I've pruned them well now, but you can hopefully see it here. This side shoot wants to become its own plant, almost its own branch. And then you have a fruit or a flower that becomes a fruit, and you can see that here. So here at this node you can see a leaf, a fruit, and the side shoot, and there's no tendril. But sometimes, like over here, you have side shoot, fruit, tendril, and leaf, and then the main stem. And so what you want to prune out to get best production and training and shape, you want to remove the side shoot, you want to remove the tendril, even though you could leave it, but it's best removed, otherwise it starts to grab onto the neighboring plants. And you remove the leaves only when all of the plant has fruited up to there. So what do I mean by that? That we have removed all the lower leaves up to the first maturing fruit, almost. So here I didn't actually go up to the first maturing fruit because this plant has already produced heavily. I want to leave more leaves for photosynthesis. In the case of tomatoes, you would use that rule, and I can show it to you there. So where the first truss is, we remove all the lower leaves, and sometimes you can go a little bit above. With cucumbers, they grow so fast, so one has to be careful not to remove too much to reach the first maturing fruit. But you see that they're producing nicely. Now the ripe ones, oh look, this must have ripened in the last few hours because I've done a lot of picking this morning. And here we have a new succession plant donated by our volunteer Rachel, very kindly. And so we'll see, this is Market More, whereas the varieties of cucumbers we're growing this year are Passandra and Socrates, and that's that. And Cavallonero from last year in November, still producing strong and not bolting. Look at that. We should keep seeds from this plant. Whereas the brother there has gone to flower long ago. While we're here, let me show you the aubergines and peppers. It's an experiment this year. It's difficult to grow these crops in the UK, especially from seeds. So what we did is we bought, like many growers do over here, we bought some grafted aubergine plants and some sweet pepper plants from an organic nursery, rather than starting them from seed. So these are yellow and red bell peppers. I can't remember the variety names, I'm afraid. And the aubergine is the classical black pearl, which has been grafted. Let's see if we can see the graft line. I think it's there. It's been grafted really well. It's blending in with the rootstock nicely. And they're really behind because we really bought them way too late. But hopefully they'll catch up. Some of them are a bit bigger than the others. Right, so enough summer crops. Look at these guys. It really is a fantastic year for tomatoes. I've never seen anything like that on beef tomatoes. I must admit, this variety we had never grown before, so it might be that as well. It's Brandy Boy, so you want to keep your eyes on it. Oh, might be the first beef tomato of the season that we eat ourselves. Okay, cool. So in the propagation area, while we're here, it's a bit untidy this time of the year, but we're doing a lot of sowing. Coriander, dill, cabbages. These are the spare aubergine plants, and then we've got some flowers that Flavia has sowed or sown. Yeah, let me know what's the right way, sowed, sown. And here there's other things, cavallonero, more kales, beetroots, chicories. They have to go in the ground tomorrow. They're ready to go. More chicories, endives or endives or endive, whatever you want to call it. And then we've got beetroots, cabbage, and more beetroots. French beans, the last succession of French beans, which will crop into the early autumn. And then we've got more beetroots. Way too many beetroots, actually. We're still picking so many beetroots. And these are the pots in which the basil has been potted up into, and they've been transplanted. So these are some spare plants. We might sell these because they're looking nice. And this is some more kale. No, this is cabbage actually. Sorry, and this is more cabbage for autumn and winter, and beetroots. And these are Rachel's market more, which we will slowly plant to replace some of the weakest cucumber plants. Okay, that's enough for the polytunnel. Let's go outside. Oh, actually, before we go, chili peppers doing really well in pots, even 2 plants per pot. And this one I think is Frigitelli. It's not really a chili, but I'm not sure. Flavia will know about this actually. We'll have a look when they ripen. Okay, let's go outside. Okay, and we are outside. I did sweat quite a bit in there. It's very humid and very hot. So much to show you out here. I don't know where to start from. Well, let's start from over here. I'm just going to turn the camera around and we'll start from the top, even though it's a bit not very original, but you know what, it makes sense. So here we go. These are our syntropic or experimental polyculture beds. A lot of things have been added because a lot of things have been harvested, like the broad beans and other things we add in there. So you can't see much happening. There are some French beans, some have been attacked by slugs. There is some Amoro squash, which is a type of winter squash that produces without trailing. And this one here, like a courgette plant, but it produces squash. And then there are French beans there, and it's actually interesting. I might show you as I talk what this bed looked like in the past. We had very tall flowering Phacelia, a haven for not for slugs, but for bees of all types, and hoverflies as well. And we crimped it. So I crimped it, and then what I did is I left it on the ground. We removed it because when you crimp it and leave it on the ground in dry weather like this, it's very easy to pull without removing the roots. And then essentially without adding any compost, just broad forked and put some beans in, and they've been doing quite well despite the weather because we've watered them. Behind them you can see the borlotti beans and the kale that our volunteer Paul harvested really heavily. So these plants were very vigorous and big, but all of the bigger leaves have been harvested and we've left only the main ones in the middle to recover. And these plants were in the shade for several months, in total shade, because they've got a huge wall on the south side and they had a tall Phacelia bed in front of them, so they were like in this 35 centimeter corridor with no light whatsoever, and they've done really well. Actually chard benefits from some shade in the heat of the summer, in the height of the summer, sorry, and in the heat of the summer I guess as well. So coriander, with this weather you can't stop it from going to flower, but we can still harvest some stalks and some leaves and make some nice bunches. Unfortunately though, it won't last very long. Perpetual spinach, this is a new succession. There's my shadow in the way. This bit has been picked, as you can tell, and that one hasn't, and it's already bolting. It's quite rare this perpetual spinach bolts, but this time of the year with this heat we haven't watered it enough. It's struggling. Cauliflower, some plants have been destroyed by slugs, but that's okay, we'll keep replacing them. And over here you can see Chinese leaf. And again, we had this problem in the spring. There's a lot of flea beetle, but at the end of the day they seem to only attack the outer leaves, and when the plant grows it makes a tight heart and they can't access that, so the actual harvested part of the crop is intact. And there are some purple ones at the back there. Let me show you. I'll show you when we harvest these. They look really pretty when they get harvested. They get really fuchsia, almost very strong, very bright pink. Okay, this is the other side of the borlotti crop. just to give you an idea how much shade they cast. It's rarely sunny in here. There's a little bit of sun now because it's right on top of us, but during the day this is really shady corridor in there, but that's fine. They grow tall and get the light from the top leaves. So the chard on this side has bolted partly, and that's also due to the fact that it's on the south side and there's a lot more sunshine. Let me show you this beautiful interplanting actually. So you can tell that the French beans have now started cropping. We have to harvest these every day now. I haven't been good this last couple of days. I mean, I haven't been on top of it this last couple of days, but we've harvested them in the week. And in the middle, if you remember, there are some alliums, and in this case it's difficult to get in there. There are some shallots doing really nicely. Yeah, can't really see. There's yellow French beans here. Let me see if there is a spot where we can see them better. So this is actually a nice representation. There are these are leeks actually, but in this case there were shallots down the middle and French beans on the side. Have a look at our previous tours if you want to see how that works. And then in this case we put some carrots as well as shallots. So in the jungle here in the middle there are some carrots growing, and the bushy varieties of beans protect them from the sun. And here we go, some shallots. You can see that they are bobbing up nicely. Beautiful pink zebrune shallots. And the beans, there are purple ones, yellow ones. You might be interested in seeing actually the way they look. Let me go over there. So this is how the yellow Orinoco, beautiful French bean variety, looks like. This purple one is amethyst, and then we have a classic maxi green, very fast growing, really big French bean pods. Okay, over here we have got carrots, different successions again. Hello Roger, do you come and say hello? Come on this way. You're too hot. Oh, you want to hide in the shade? He's constantly kind of sitting or lying down in the shade of the beans, which makes sense. So this is the latest succession of, well, not the latest, but the one before that, of carrots. Not very successful. It's been hot, and so germination is tricky, keeping them wet. These were market Paris carrots. Let me show you what I mean by Paris market carrots. They are this round type. They stay like this, and they can be used as a snack. And then we have some lovely Napoli and Milano carrots. Let me get some out of here. This is no dig. It's not being dug. I've just picked the wrong one. Usually they don't fork. We've been picking kilos and kilos, and they're really nice. But you always have the odd one out. There we go. So this is an average no dig carrot in our garden. Relatively long, nice and straight. And you have the odd forked one when it hits a stone or something like that, but that happens in any soil. And remember, we have very heavy clay soil, so being able to grow carrots without digging might seem impossible, but it's definitely possible. These are Milano. Let me show you some Yellowstone. There are some varieties of yellow carrots as well over here. All right, Rog, you want to entertain the audience while I pick one of these? It's not really picking, it's pulling, isn't it? Let me show you. Yeah, these are not ready yet, but I might try and pull it anyway. There we go. It's not too bad actually. This one must have hit the clay interface there, but still a nice long, relatively straight carrot, not too forked, not too bendy. And so that's our carrots. I'll show you a video with more carrots that we picked the other day. Some beautiful no-dig carrots, Napoli, the orange one, and Yellowstone, the yellow ones. And notice how they are nice and long, despite our very heavy clay soil, and not digging at all. There still is rocket under here, but it's flowered, wild rocket. These are runner beans, favourite of the English vegetable eater. Two varieties, Lady Di, stringless, and this time we tried also White Lady. Hopefully it'll be nice. So there are some radishes under there. Over here we've got tarp over the perpetual spinach. You know where there are holes, the perpetual spinach is trying to grow, but we're aiming to kill it, even though it's pushing the tarp up with the heat, without water and without too much oxygen. It should kill it, and so we don't need to pull them up, and we don't need to cut them one by one. And this is red Russian kale, later succession. In here we removed the cauliflowers, which were on the side. There's still one in there. And the carrots finally get the light. These were sowed the same day as the cauliflowers were transplanted. And then we have just sowed some radishes. Now they'll struggle because it's hot and there's a lot of flea beetle. But we might get a crop. I should put netting over these. Yeah, that's a good reminder. That's why we do videos, isn't it? As well as showing you, I guess. So cauliflower. Cauliflower, these are actually small ones. This variety is quite big normally. We've harvested the bigger ones, but they are giant snowball, really nice variety. Some directly sown radishes in there, starting to become big enough. And this is some more cauliflower. We've gone crazy with the cauliflower, and you can see that there are some carrots sown under there. When we remove the cauliflowers, they'll get more light. They're actually germinating now. Some of them, and those ones have germinated a while ago. But they'll get light and hopefully they'll have enough sun to mature. On this side we have celery. Now celery is a difficult crop because it's tricky to germinate, and it's also very water demanding. It needs a lot of water, so in a summer like this it won't be as sweet. We're trying to water them a little bit more than the rest, but you know what happens with celery, if it doesn't get a lot of water, is that it goes stringy and a little bit bitter. Now we have a variety here of celery which is called pink something, can't remember, pink or blush I think it's called. So it's kind of a pink celery. Ooh, very lovely smell actually, but it's got a few strings and it's better for cooking than for eating raw. The other white kind of green variety is Victoria, beautiful classic that self-blanches. Hopefully you can see in there, it's not blanching yet, but it's quite nice, very sweet and few strings. So what's up in front, or behind the celery there, we had peas, and you can see more peas there that we have cut at the base so that the plants dry up and we can remove them, roll them up with the netting support, which in this case is nylon, not the best actually. I'll show you a better version of that. And the beetroots which were on the side, especially the ones on the north side, now get a lot of light and are starting to produce. They produced even with the spinach with the peas in place, but now obviously they're growing faster. And these guys have had it, so we cut the base, we let them dry on the plants so that it's not the best really, but we remove the water, we let it evaporate from the leaves, and so it's easier to roll them up and move them. And there's a lot less weight if the water goes away. If we were to roll them up and remove them like this, it would be tricky. We're not harvesting many of these purple ones. They were a big disappointment. Can't remember even the name of the variety. It was supposed to be a munch too, but it was very stringy. Then as a podding pea, as a shelling pea, it seems to get maggots straight away, and they go really hard and not particularly tasty. So a definite no. They're from Premier Seeds. I would discourage you from buying this variety at least, or at least not buy it from Premier Seeds. It might have to do with a problem in the seed saving or in cross-pollinating. These are munch too, still a few good ones in there. And we'll slowly remove all of these beds and leave the posts in place and leave the beetroots to grow underneath. It's a jungle in there now. It starts to get a little bit weedier. Actually, these are not weeds, but these are beetroot leaves, but there'll be the odd weed in there, like this is self-seeded rocket here. And there's a little bit of kutch grass coming via seed. Behind these guys there are broad beans, and this is a variety called the Sutton. An ancient, well not an ancient, but a heritage variety. They're dwarf, so they don't go tall and don't flop. They're beautiful, clean pods, a little bit shorter than the Manita or the Acqua Dolce you might be used to. But they're really nice and full, these pods, and they taste amazing. And they're getting a bit of rust now. It's very late for broad beans, so we'll remove them. We'll remove the pods and the plants together soon. Let me go back a little bit because I've jumped a bit. So we have leeks here. The leeks are such a great crop, at least in our climate and soil. You just plant them in, forget about them, and they do really nicely. And again, I mean, you might be used to different ways of planting leeks, and some people find it quite outrageous that we do it this way. This is the way we learned from Charles Dowding, and it's very effective on our scale. We plant multi-sown plugs with 3 to 4 leeks, and we transplant them like they are, as if they were a normal plant, without paddling, without making very deep holes. They self-plunge, they're really good, they taste amazing. They're one of our best sellers in autumn and winter. And here mixed with a bit of parsley, but we'll remove the parsley soon. You can see, you can get an idea of the weed pressure we have. We haven't weeded in a long time, and this is all the weeds we get. So we got here something I'm not recognizing actually. It looks like rose bay will have, but it's not it, I think. It's got more clumping habit. Then some thistles, that's a self-seeded radish, and there's some creeping buttercup, and then there is some grass, some spreading grass, which might be couch. And then oh, here we go, there's some rose bay, willow hub, which is typical in our soil. And yeah, a dock there, so that's the full range, but very few, you know, easy to do. In 5 minutes I can get rid of all these weeds. So that's the idea, isn't it, with no dig. And here we got coriander, again going to flower. Unfortunately, it's a shame we didn't harvest much of this, but it's always a gamble with coriander, because some summers it grows all right without bolting if the water is there and the weather is not too hot. Can you see Roger at the back there? Oops, my finger. It's just over here. Panting. I'll give him some water in a bit. He's been drinking a lot. So beetroots. This bed has been broad forked, ready to be transplanted with something else. There were spring onions there. Broccoli. Now this is a succession. So this is the first succession. We cut them. A little bit of hollow stem, boron deficiency sometimes, but it might be other things. Sometimes they grow a bit too fast, and that's why they get hollow stem. For example, this guy didn't get it. Very big broccoli heads we got from them, and I'll show you in a minute the new succession to give you an idea of the size. And then side shoots are coming. We were recommended this variety called Bellstar F1. Yeah, you see this one doesn't have any hollowness to it. And they send off some side shoots with beautiful broccoli heads. There are some carrots in the middle there, but they're not going to do much, I believe. So these are more broccoli, but purple sprouting, so they'll produce in November and December. And here we've got new succession broccoli head, beautiful large broccoli heads. There's more there, and they're all getting ready to be picked. And more purple sprouting broccoli. Ooh, while we're here, shall we chat about irrigation? Let me turn the camera around and talk a little bit about irrigation. It might be good to break it up a little bit, isn't it? Rather than showing you veg on veg on veg on veg. So this guy here is a NAN, N-A-A-N sprinkler. You can get it in the UK from different suppliers. And the way it works is that you can set it up as a part circle, as it's called. So you can bring this thing down. There we go. Left hand. And so it will circle between these green things that you can move to make it do a bigger or smaller circle, or you can lift that. Not very good with my left hand, am I? And so it goes around. And the way this works, as many sprinklers, is it's an impact head. So if it's got enough pressure, this thing will make the whole thing rotate, but also hammer into the water jet, and so it spreads around. But you can also regulate this to lower jet, and you also have another control screw here which spreads it out, so you can control the height, the spread, lateral spread, and also the amount of rotation. You need quite a bit of pressure to operate these, but they're really good because they allow you to do a lot of different things. We got, if you can see it, let me turn the camera around. We've got one line per path, so there's one line here, one line along that path, one on the other side, and there's one line there. And we have to operate them one by one or two by two because they need a lot of pressure. Okay, so this side is the saddest side of the garden. We have transplanted some kale. This part of the garden has always been really terrible in terms of fertility and compaction. But we got a good crop of lettuce. These ones unfortunately have gone past their best. We can still harvest some of the deer tongue there. These are bolting. But we're pleased with the quality, considering that these beds had never been able to grow any good crops. And you can see that the kale is being attacked really heavily now by those slugs. I don't like my shadow in the way, you can't see much. And this bed has been attacked really badly compared to the one at the top that I just showed you earlier on. Showed you earlier on. This one. And that's because as we go down, the quality of the soil gets worse. And the parsley did okay, and now it's starting to show signs of lack of oxygen. So they're improving after one round of green manures, broad forking, a bit of chicken manure, and a lot of compost, but still not there. And you can see it here as well. This broccoli compared to the ones at the top, they're obviously way slower, and that's got to do with the soil. Here you can see what we've done with a green manure of oats, black oats. We mowed them when they flowered, and then actually no, what I did is I crimped them, mowed them a little bit, but left enough of the lower part of the stem on the ground, and it's produced a nice mulch, and the roots have rotted in the ground, and the soil benefits enormously from this type of treatment. Even though it's dry now, if we were to fork into there, it would be a lot more friable than usual. The disadvantage is if you don't cut early enough, soon enough, you get a little bit of seed. But these guys don't have, the seeds inside are not viable in many of these heads because they were cut when the seed hasn't developed yet, hopefully. So there's a husk, there might be a seed in there. But we'll see if we get any wind pressure. Oat is easy to pull up. Okay, so this is a lovely area. There's some more willow. There's some more willow that we planted last year to add to our collection of willow that we had from year one. Now the grasses are not really wanted, but we haven't had time to deal with them. And this is different types of willows that Flavia selected for their colours and shapes. And underneath we have some lavender, some thyme, some rosemary. They're doing really, really well. Okay, we'll go up there later. Let me just go around. Under here there are some red cabbages interplanted with parsnips. As we go forwards here, you can see on the left the oldest willow, which has been coppiced once and then trimmed again a few weeks ago. We're still going strong. A lot of the trimmings of the prunings have gone on the ground, as you can see. And whenever you cut the willow, I've been talking about this for a while now, you give a pulse to the system, you stimulate the rosemary, the oregano, the sage and all the neighbouring herbs to get a flush of growth. And you can see the rosemary, even though it's shaded from the south and has got the willows of the roots of the willow taking water from it, it's really happy. Oh, look at that. I have just discovered something really nice. There is a bumblebee's nest there. Hopefully you can see this. Look at the number of bees in there. They go in and out. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. Lots of bees hiding in here. I wonder if they're looking for water. If you know a lot about bees, please tell me what's happening there. It seems to be a nest, but also there are some honey and bumblebees at the same time. They seem to be eating something from the leaves of the willow. Very interesting. Anyway, so what we have on this side, beetroot, different types of beetroots, different varieties. There, very interestingly, you have, this was planted a long time ago. Beetroots on the side which have done really well, and spring onions in the middle. And you can see there are some pockets where we didn't cut, we definitely didn't cut all of the willows. Some of the roots get there and suck up all the water. So if we don't prune the top growth, the roots don't self-prune, and then they compete with the vegetables nearby. And we only have that in that patch. Can you see the difference? It's quite interesting, isn't it? So obviously over here we've done the right thing, but there must be some intruder root there, and we need to keep on top of pruning these guys low. It's nice that they act as a windbreak, but it's important to have a rotation so that we cut all of them at different times. So this is untidy. There were cabbages here. We're going to remove the ones that have cracked, but there is cavallonero looking really pretty at the back there. And here we've got some bulb onions. These are red, bulb onions. I seem to always have my shade in the way. Apologies about that. Red Carmen, they're bulbing up now. You can see that. A bit slower than Santero, which is our white onion variety. So this was an interplanting of coriander and Chinese leaf. Chinese leaf is now coming to an end. Coriander will let it go to seed so we can harvest the seeds. This is the Santero variety I was talking about. Beautiful bulb onion. They're now ready to be harvested. And again, remember I did a video about this. Have a look at spring transplanting or something like that, where I transplanted these plugs. They were really small plants, 4 per plug, and now we get a nice harvest of bunches of 4 onions. So you can remove an individual one from the clump without damaging the rest of them. These broad beans we let die on the ground. It wasn't intended really. We wanted to harvest some seeds. So I think Flavia will come here and have a look at how the seeds are doing. I don't know if this is supposed to happen. They seem to have dried out really, but the seeds might be good in the pods. Okay, so these are more bulb onions. Have a look at the side. I think this is Stuttgart, which is a giant bulb onion, a bit flattish. These beds will be filled tomorrow with some chicory. You can see here how much compost we add every year. It's not a lot. It's just a couple of centimeters, as opposed to this one that hasn't been topped up yet. And so nothing compared to when we make a new bed, which is really thick, 15 to 20 centimeter layer. These are leeks interplanted with lettuce and beetroots. Amazing how they're not dying in this heat. Courgettes have grown so massive. They're producing so many fruits. We've been picking them every day. We've got some beautiful varieties here. I'm not going to go through them because it will take forever. But yeah, lovely courgette planting. And these guys were in our own compost. It's funny actually. Those ones were planted in green waste compost. The ones at the top. There's another bed here. And they did very well initially. And then they started to slow down, and these guys were producing a lot more. And now this guy seems to have gotten to have been infected by powdery mildew a little bit at the bottom, and they've slowed down, whereas these ones are picking up again. So obviously release of nutrients and moisture different ways with different types of compost. The ones at the back there are in a mixture of our own and the green waste compost, and they're doing really well. Roger is still looking for birds under the netting. Sometimes they get stuck in there. That cabbage at the back is a giant cabbage which is meant for sauerkraut making. It's called Fidelkraut, if I'm not mistaken. This is a red Russian kale. We'll remove it now. We'll pick the good leaves and remove the rest. Some cabbages that were put in this gap. Now you can really see what it means to dig. So we've dug these paths because there was a problem of drainage here. So there's gravel under the wood chip, and the topsoil from the paths went onto the beds. I've discussed this in previous tours. And so these beds are nicely raised. They don't get drainage issues. But by digging, we've disturbed the ecosystem. And look at the amount of weeds we get in there. You know, how does it compare to our no dig beds? It does really make you think, doesn't it? Look at this beautiful Cavalonera. Gorgeous, fantastic crop. Some people have been asking about white butterflies. What do we do for white butterflies? I might discuss that in another video, but I've already talked about this in previous tours. Essentially, we encourage parasitic wasps that take care of a lot of caterpillars by parasitizing on them, and we do that by always having a brassica in flower so that the adult wasps can feed off the nectar and the pollen, and when they lay eggs, then the larvae can eat the caterpillars directly from the brassica plants. And in time, the butterflies don't get attracted to lay eggs on the same plants, because the rotting, dying caterpillars give off a smell that they recognize as a threat. Not too much to see here. Actually, yes, this is a nice bed. So we got some perpetual spinach, the later succession. Already these guys are struggling for water a little bit, but because this is a raised bed, same thing as before, and you can see a bit of wind pressure there. And yeah, but this will be cut hopefully next week. We should do it this week, but we don't have enough demand at the moment of spinach. Lots of people going on holiday, a lot of people not cooking much, so salads sell well, but not spinach. This is canasta, one of my favorite summer lettuces. Beautiful Italian variety, sometimes called Maravilla de Verano or Saragossa in the Spanish version. And here we got black seeded Simpson. I'll put on in a second a video that shows all the varieties we've added this week in our crop. Now they're very soft. Obviously they're struggling for water. They're very densely planted. But see, this matting effect protects the soil from the sun and allows it to remain moist. Look at that. No weeds because they don't get any light to germinate, and best use of water this way. And so 4 rows of lettuce on a 75 centimeter beds is quite a good system. This bed will be planted soon. Again, you can see some of the clay because the paths have been dug up. After this, we'll never dig these again, but you know, there'll be a lot of weeding to do because of that first disturbance. And it goes to show, broad forking is nothing compared, you know, it's not comparable with this. When you broad fork, you don't get any weeds because you don't invert the layers. But when you dig something up from here and put it there, it's really a huge disturbance, and the soil responds by trying to fix all this mess with weeds and covering and getting that matting effect that we have already artificially artificial is not the right word, but we have done by design here with our lettuce. The soil, the ecosystem wants to do it with weeds, and you've seen earlier on how that works. And so here we have the rocket, beautiful flowers you can eat, the buds and also the flowers, and they're really providing a lot of food for all sorts of insects. More lettuce up here. Okay, let me show you the squash, the Two Sisters patch, let's call it like that. And now these guys have grown a lot since last time, haven't they? I'm going to turn the camera around, but they're way taller than, just taller than me, but the ones in the middle might be way taller than me actually. And this bed, let me turn the camera around. You saw it planted by Claire, our volunteer, earlier in the season, and there's a lot of squash in there, but these plants have done really fantastically well. They've been planted in our own compost, and there are some volunteer things as a result of that. There's some potatoes in there. Can you see the potato plant? There's some cornflower, and there's some purslane, but it's a jungle in there. The corn and the squash are amazingly healthy. No sign of disease, no sign of deficiency, and they're spreading into the path. They've already gone out at least a meter into the path. And at the back here, our volunteer David has put some more of our own compost next to the tank. So this is a very new, brand new bed, and planted some more squash, and they were planted a lot later than these, but they're already doing an amazing job of mulching. This is something you can do with green manures. If you don't have space to compost them and you don't want to use them as a direct mulch because of seeds or other things, you can make a nice bank on the edges of your plot. It keeps weeds down, it creates wildlife habitat, and it's quite lovely actually how it dries, and it creates a nice barrier for weeds, especially at the boundaries where they're difficult to deal with. And if the stuff germinates, it's not going to be an issue. I mean, in this dry weather it won't anyway, but in time you might get some weed pressure from the green manures germinating there, but we're going to manage it easily. And you know, it's true that this creates habitat also for voles and rats and things like that, but it's not a huge deal at this stage. It might become later on in the season. Oh, some of the uchikikuri squash is already looking up. Look, there are some volunteer tomatoes in here. There's everything. There are different varieties of squash. When they start maturing, I'll show them to you one by one. And let's move on. The flower beds are looking also very nice. There's some hollyhock, there's some sunflower, there's some borage, lots of things going on. And again, this is really Flavio's work, trying to keep it very densely planted and very attractive to all sorts of wildlife. There's mallow, there's all sorts, and she will hopefully do a video soon explaining what's in here and how it works. This is parsley that she's keeping for seed saving. It looks also pretty. Alright, so let's move through here. More sunflowers, more plants for wildlife, dying, edible flowers, and so on and so forth. And here we have got our comfrey. Look at the horses down there. This is quite a long tour actually. I didn't realise it was going to take so long to show you stuff. Hopefully you don't mind a long video. Comfrey, and this is spring onions and leeks. Well, let's go down to the perennial bit, which is more interesting and more different if you want. So the comfrey here has been let to go to flower. Now that the flowers have expired, let's say that they're not interesting or attractive to the pollinators any longer, we can remove them. And so what we've done is we have cut the comfrey down, and it's already sprouting back. We'll gradually do this and add it to our compost or make liquid fertilizer from it. Edible flowers, borage, calendula, nasturtium and other stuff. And here we've got our perennial bed with our Italian Neapolitan broccoli, which actually not a perennial but a biennial. The globe artichokes doing really well. Look at the Jerusalem artichokes, which survived the slug attacks and now are about to flower. Well, it's a good idea to chop them down now, at least cut them down to, or I would say hip height. Don't know if that's a good way of explaining it. You know, a meter off the ground, so that they don't flower, and so they produce more bulbs and less, more rhizomes, I should say, and less flowers. And you know, if you want the flowers, then you're going to lose a little bit of the crop. And this is a cutting of Daubenton kale. This Daubenton kale, the French version, and then the Tontondine, which is the Devonian. Well, shouldn't say Devonian, the Southwest England version. There we go. So here we got some ochre. Then there are a few weeds in here because we rarely get the time to weed this patch. Some Chinese artichokes. That's a funnily shaped tuber. And here some beetroots and chard that we have completely forgotten. Oh gosh, look at this. Look at the size of this beetroot. Can barely fit in my hand. We've forgotten about these guys and they've gone really too big. Look at this big clump of beetroots. There's at least 6 in there, and they're all very big despite the crowding. Rhubarb, and here some sweet corn. All right, let me show you one last thing some people might be interested in. This is some New Zealand spinach. It's gone to flower. It's not doing amazing, and it's not the best in flavour when it's so hot. But you know, we wanted to add it to salads. We have a second succession at the bottom there, over there. Anyway, I don't know if we'll ever do anything with it this year because it seems to have gone a little bit tough and leathery, and also quite pungent as a flavour. Salanova lettuce is here. This is the untidy bit I've shown you earlier on. I think this might be it. So let me just go at the top, and then I'll say goodbye. Right, Rog? End of the tour? Might be. Here we go. So that's the end of July's tour. I wanted to keep it short and sweet, but I don't know if I've succeeded at that. Let us know what you think about the garden, what your gardens look like, and if there's something you'd like us to discuss. Flavia will do a video on the flowers. I'll try to convince her to do it sooner rather than later. And yeah, I've been doing a lot of videos in Italian because people have been asking a lot of questions under our video tours in Italian. And so I try to respond to those questions with separate videos where I discuss and explain what we do and why we do it, and also try and get some feedback from you guys. But it hasn't happened on the English videos, so I'm not likely to do any more videos, especially at this time of the year, unless there's something specific that you'd like to see. So please comment underneath if you're interested in something specific, and then in that case I'll try to find the time and the energy to do more videos. That's it for today. I wish you a nice hot summer spell, and I will see you in the next one, which will very likely be towards mid-August. Have fun. We're about to pack a few bags of salad, so I thought I'd make a nice board with all the varieties we've got this week. So we got Navarra, Jabek, Black-Seeded Simpson, Cervantes, Cerbiata, Olana, and then we got Lolo Rosso, the beautiful Deetong. This is a butterhead, I think all year round, and this is called Red Ruffle Saw, Barlock. And then we've got all the small bits like the pea shoots, cinnamon basil, tree spinach, calendula, nasturtiums, and coriander, purslane, dill, borage, and sunflower shoots. So this will be our salad bag this week. and there's going to be obviously 150 grams of this in a bag. This is just a representative board. Come on, let's go.